There's a small country in Europe called Belarus. Right now, the official opposition, the party that has a chance to depose and replace a dictator who has ruled for 26 years, comes straight out of YouTube. This is not the first YouTuber to transform the world of electoral parliamentary politics, and it's not going to be the last. This is August 8th, 2020, and we're passing a really interesting milestone in terms of the whole world waking up to realize the political potential of YouTube, the political potential of video and audio being shared over social media if some other website rises up to compete with or replace YouTube. There's an election being contested in the tiny country of Belarus, population 10 million, right now. And the official opposition, so to speak, is a phenomenon entirely created by YouTube that's risen up to challenge what most people regard as a kind of dictatorship that has been in power in Belarus for 26 years. There was a man who started making YouTube videos complaining that the government was corrupt. Again, YouTube isn't special. I'm sure these videos were also shared on Facebook or what have you. He was himself formerly a bank manager. And when it became clear that he wasn't just content to criticize the government, and when he was gaining more and more followers and more viewers for his critique of what was wrong in the politics of Belarus, when it became clear that he was in fact going to nominate himself to stand for election, the government went through the records of what he'd done in his job as a bank manager, and they found some pretext to put him in prison. I wasn't born yesterday. I don't presume that he's innocent. It's malicious prosecution either way, of course. He was put in prison to stop him participating in the elections and to stop him from chastising the government. However, it's quite possible that anyone who's been a bank manager for a few years at some point or another has done something wrong that there's some paper trail for that can get them put in prison. So he's in prison right now, and his wife is standing in his place. His wife is quite good looking and quite well spoken. I have not studied any of the languages concerned, but it seems to me, I'm just listening to the clips of the two of them and seeing the English translation on screen. It seems to me that in many ways she's a better candidate for president of Belarus, and she's delivering the same message with a great deal of charisma and aplomb. So this is a case where real politics. All right. Let me word this carefully. It would be so easy for me to say, this is a case where social media and YouTube intersect with and derail the world of real politics. And that's not what I want to say at all. What I want to say is this. I want to say that we have been kidding ourselves to think that YouTube and real politics are two different things. They're not. This is not the first YouTuber to transform the world of electoral parliamentary politics, and it's not going to be the last. Do you guys remember when Sargon of Akkad made the leap from YouTube political commentator to actually running in elections? I completely despise Sargon of Akkad. I have no sympathy for him. I'm not a fan of his videos. Nevertheless, when that happened, we can say, hey, I'm not sure if this is the first guy to make the transition from YouTuber to standing for election for parliament, but it's not going to be the last, right? And why? It's because this medium has unbelievable, wonderful advantages over so-called real-world politics. This whole ego trip we're on in the modern Western decadent world, that we're somehow superior to other cultures because back in Athens they came up with this thing called democracy. Really think it through. Really think through how crummy and limited the process of receiving and debating and discussing and deciding on ideas was back in Athens. All right? You get together a couple hundred people in a room at the Boule. People give these very passionate, over-the-top lectures, demagoguery. All our vocabulary in the English language related to politics derives from this brief period in Athens. The origin of these ideas and these words in English, even demagogue and so on, right? People would practice rhetoric. You can read Aristotle's book on rhetoric, etc. And then it's like, okay, you've had 5 minutes to think about it. You heard this side of the debate. You heard that side of the debate. Now you guys make a decision, and you decide if we're going to go to war or not. You decide if these couple hundred people are going to be slaughtered or not. You decide if Socrates is guilty or innocent, if you're going to kill him or not. Terrible binding decisions with long-term consequences were made with no research, no reflection, no ability of the people in that crowd to fact check something by Googling it. You know what I mean? Oh, you claim that the sewage system is working just fine. Well, I just Googled it, and this is how much particulate matter is in the river, and this is, you know what I mean? Like there are levels to this democratic participation. We have so many advantages gathering in this assembly right now with you and you and you in your kitchen, in your living room, even if you're washing the dishes while you're doing it, that you can hear this and you can chit chat with your husband or wife. You can Google, you can fact check, you can compare another opinion. And if you scroll down the list of videos of this guy, Viktar, I'm sorry, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his last name. Okay, Viktar Babaryka. The numbers on these videos are not huge. So, 30,000 views, 50,000 views, 80,000 views, right? But the number of people who have participated in any of the important decisions in our Western democracies at any stage of our history is also, not very huge. I mean, how many people really participated in the decision to make an amendment to the U.S. Constitution to make alcohol illegal? This is considered one of the great misadventures in American history. If you look through that, well, there was this tiny minority of actually women activists who wanted to make alcohol illegal, and they got the legislation through and so on. How many people participated in the decision to make seatbelts mandatory? On and on it goes. How many people participated in the decision to put warning labels on cigarettes? How many people participated in the decision for the government to support the nicotine industry with subsidies? I mean, whatever issue it is, if you actually try to evaluate how many people, not how many people could participate, how many people actually do participate, it may be very worrying. It's not what YouTube can be. It's what YouTube really is in our lives, for me and you and you and you. And the next step is doing exactly what they already did in Belarus, which is taking those discussions, taking this fundamentally participatory and thoughtful and transparent model of people engaging one another in debate and sharing information and so on, and take the next step to connect it to the formal democratic process. If you think this is trash, if you think what we're doing right now, you and I, face to face, if you think this conversation we're having is worthless, have you ever actually been to a political convention? It's awful. You never get this much honesty. You never get this much exchange of views. I mean, you get a couple hundred people organized in theater seating, like imitating a parliament, right? People stand up and they read very kind of procedurally defined statements, and then votes are taken. It's a very phony, very procedural, very robotic, very dry sort of thing. And most people who go to those conferences will tell you after they've been to a few of them, they just show up for the party afterwards or something. They show up beforehand and afterwards. They don't want to actually participate in the proceedings because it's a complete waste of time.
We are debating the amendment to the committee report, and that amendment is to swap six of the the amendment is to take six different delegates to recognize six different delegates from East Bay from what the committee report said. Could someone please run a mic to the comrade in the jean jacket, of which there are many?
Most people aren't aware of how great this technology we all take for granted, because they don't have that contrast clearly in mind of what it's really like to go out and try to participate in party conferences, party congresses, what it's like to actually give a deposition at City Hall, what it's like to try to get your voice heard in provincial parliament, in federal parliament, in Congress, whatever the system is of government where you happen to live. Try. Go out and try. Get disappointed, get pissed off, get your heart broken, come back to YouTube and appreciate this wonderful opportunity we've got. All right? It's really wonderful. Now, I will never say to you, YouTube's a good way to make money. It's not. It's terrible, okay? It's not. It's a wonderful way to change the world. It's a wonderful way to improve yourself as a human being, as an intellectual. It's a wonderful way to inspire yourself and motivate yourself to read more books. You get questions from your audience. You ask your audience questions. Again, sometimes I recommend a book to people in the audience. I say, hey, I'm reading this book. I recommend it to you also. And then I get email from people that they've finished the book. I'm still only on chapter 6. I got to spend more time reading. There's a really positive galvanizing effect on my life that way. It can have that effect on your life also.
We're going to take a hand count right now. And hopefully this online voting system will work soon. When a counter has gone around and confirmed, nodded at you or something.
And the delegate who brought clickers.
You can lower your hand. But only when the person who's counting has verbally or confirmed with their body language that they've counted your vote.
I'm rising to speak against this amendment to the rules, as it would inhibit the democracy that is inherent to our organization. If you look at it, most of the time that has been wasted in this body was not wasted on debate. It was wasted in vote after vote after vote and voting on whether we're going to vote on voting.
The reality of participation in democracy. I just say, I engaged in debates with Buddhists for 10 years on the internet. And a lot of these people had really, really strong opinions about the history of Buddhism. But then sooner or later it would come up, have you ever been to a Buddhist temple? Have you ever been to one just once, whether in Cambodia or Japan or in England, anywhere? And it would always be revealed that these people who had, the deepest convictions about this religion actually had developed these convictions totally just reading articles on Wikipedia, just sitting alone at their computer. It's maybe if you actually participated in a Buddhist community, you'd see things a little bit differently. I don't mean not necessarily better, for better and worse. You'd see things differently, If you think about politics entirely as a sort of abstract set of principles on the chalkboard, that's one thing. When you start actually attending party conferences, if you actually try to participate in debates at City Hall, at your provincial government, whatever kind of government you have in the country you're living in, whether at the level of a party that's in opposition or the government as it's sitting and making decisions, debates and things, you will be shocked and dismayed at how hollow and meaningless the process is, how hard it is to get anyone to speak to you honestly or listen to you honestly or to deal with the real substance of whatever the problem is at your time. It's very disheartening. You might even walk away feeling my time would have been better spent giving a deposition to YouTube or watching someone else's video on YouTube discussing this kind of thing. The difference isn't just quantitative. It's also qualitative, right? 50,000 people who are spread out all over the place and can sit and think about this and talk about it with a friend and can fact check, can look things up, can Google some of the claims you're making. Maybe you're telling the truth, maybe you're lying, maybe there's some inaccuracies in your political claims. They can look up another YouTube video and hear a contrasting perspective. Qualitatively, this is profoundly better than what they had going on in Athens, at the Pnyx, at the Boule. It may be difficult to appreciate just how special what we've got going on here on YouTube is. I don't know why. You know why? You know why? Because it's cheap. Maybe we just take YouTube for granted because it's so cheap and it's so easy. Whereas paying $200 to attend a party congress or a party conference and then having to drive there and then spending at least $100 on a hotel room or stay in an Airbnb, and then you stay in the hotel room and then you go, then you get to sit in this theatrical seating, you get to sit in silence and listen to these bullshit lectures, and you never get this level of honesty. You never get kind of face-to-face meaningful interaction with anyone. And whatever, you hold your hand to vote at different times, whatever the voting system is, you vote on resolutions for your party, you vote on this kind of crap. You have this highly procedural, highly unnatural, totally dissatisfactory, ostentatiously rational, but really completely irrational ritual for democratic participation. You know what? Maybe we still value that just because it's expensive, it's difficult to do, and we assume for those reasons that it's something much more valuable than what we've already got going on here on YouTube. I think what I want to emphasize about YouTube is not that it's a substitute for real political discussion, real political organization. It's that this is real political discussion. All that you or I or anyone needs to do is take that next step to plug it into the democratic process and start getting real political outcomes. And the threshold for participation has become lower and lower and lower. I remember just how much of a sacrifice it was. I was flat broke and busy and going to university classes to scrape together the money to buy a train ticket to go and attend a Green Party conference, the Green Party of Canada, and even to pay to attend it and so on. A lot of money went into political organization at even the lowest and humblest levels. And these parties, the Green Party included, but even big parties, the Liberal Party, the Conservative Party, they rely on donations, primarily from elderly retired people, to be able to do anything, to be able to even just print pamphlets, right? The bar to entry is higher, the cost of participation is higher, and this makes them fundamentally unresponsive to the problems of their day and much more responsive to whatever their sources of funding are. And what we're doing here on YouTube doesn't require any of that at all. All we need to do is make that effort to start taking this opportunity seriously.
В самосознании людей что-то произошло, и люди начали самоорганизовываться. Вот когда посадили Сергея, как бы лидера очень большой массы людей, вроде бы нет лидера, все должны были бы разбежаться. Но люди проявили такое, вот, знаете, чувство самоорганизации очень. Я себя такой никогда не считала, возможно, потому что жизнь передо мной никогда не ставила таких задач.